Well, greetings and salutations, and welcome once again to the Newsman Weekly Podcast, episode number 21, if my math serves me correctly, or even if it doesn't. Fact of the matter is, we started this show when the sun was warm, the earth was warm, and today, not so damn much. Thanks again to local country singer Luke Watson for crafting this show's theme song, and congratulations to all of us. We made it. No more endless campaign ads, no more pundits telling us what to think and do, no more rallies and debates and mudslinging personal attacks. Election Day 2024 has come and gone.
We'll forget about it, and it'll just be back in 4 years, and we'll be like, what the hell is going on?
Exactly. And just like every election day since we began as a loosely associated democratic republic, we all survived. And as my boyhood idol H.L. Mencken once said of elections, quote, democracy is a pathetic belief in the collective wisdom of individual ignorance. Take that however you wish. God knows I do. Let's just say a prayer today that all those people that we just elected to office, who take office in January, might actually effectively govern. The jury remains out on that topic, but hey, not to worry. The May 6th primary is just 6 months away.
All right. I can't wait.
Yeah. Today, I'm once again joined by Zac Hiser, the executive producer of the Newsman Weekly. Welcome back, Zac. How is your post-election life going?
So far, it's not too much different than the pre-election life. But I did enjoy watching football this weekend without campaign ads.
Yeah, it was very sad. My wife and I have a whole bunch of shows taped, and we were watching one of them last night, and I started seeing these campaign ads for Bernie Moreno and Sherrod Brown. And I'm like, who is taking care of continuity on these TV stations? The elections, and then I realized, all this stuff was taped before election day.
You thought you were going crazy for a second.
Well, I mean, I was, but that's a whole other thing. Did you have any fun this weekend, Zac?
No, it was a pretty chill weekend. I went to a party and, did some stuff around the house. The wife's getting the Christmas decorations out.
Really?
Yeah.
It's November 12th.
I know, and she's starting a little late this year, so.
Is it typically after Halloween?
Oh, yeah. Day after Halloween, she's ready to go. And I'm fine with it. I'm fine with kind of meshing Christmas and Thanksgiving together. Since we got a home, we stay put more often. But for a while there, we were traveling a lot, going to see family for Christmas. So we only got to be around our house for so long. So it would make sense to put them up a little early. But the reality is she loves decorating for Christmas. And as soon as she gets the chance to do it, it's happening.
Well, you still have two young children at home who probably
correct. They were very excited.
Yeah, I don't have that,
mm-hmm.
and my wife and I are like, we'll put up a tree. We have an artificial tree that we bought back in 2001. I think that might be the year, and the lights have been replaced a couple of times. We still pull it out of the box and throw it up. Also back with us today is Knox Pages reporter Grant Ritchey, our show's official videographer. Ritchey, how was your weekend, and what did you do that really you don't want to tell your parents about?
They listen to the podcast, so.
No.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Turn your whatever you're listening to right now, Ritchie's turned it off because your son's about to regale us with all the illegalities he experienced in Knox County over the weekend.
Let's see. Friday night, I was at Tough Street, covering the Danville second playoff game against Portsmouth, Notre Dame, and what an absolute blowout! I think the final score was 60-2. So they'll be playing Friday night again for the semi-regional playoff spot. So I think it's Region 27. So
did you just say you were back on Tough Street?
Yes, yeah, Tough Street Stadium, baby.
That can't be the name of it.
It's on Tough Street. I don't think the stadium has a proper noun name, but like the people around there call it Tough Street.
Is there actually a street sign that says Tough Street?
It's along Tough Street. Yeah.
And they did that because that's the football team.
I'm not sure. Man, I'm not sure what came first.
You should know that I've known this from the 2018 Danville football run.
Yeah,
remember that?
I certainly don't, but I just know that if you're going to have a football team that plays its home games on Tough Street, that's something to live up to. Well, I was back on the sidelines Friday night. It was covering Ontario's second-round playoff win against Clyde. Warriors made quick work of the Flyers, 38-7. And that sets up the Richland County rematch that everybody's been waiting for. 11-1 Ontario will play 12-0 Shelby in a Division IV regional semifinal Friday night at Arlen Field in Mansfield. It'll be a rematch of their October 18 game that Shelby won on its home field, 50-36. The Whippets survived a scare against Ottawa Glendorf in their home second-round game, coming back to win 26-14. So Ontario and Shelby, the game of the century, do
you think Ontario's got a shot this time?
I mean, they had a shot the first time.
Shelby's beat them the last two. They played regular season. Shelby won, like you just said. And then last year, they had a really good game, right? Like,
they
if I
did.
remember correctly.
Yeah, but this is the first time I think they've actually met in the playoffs. So, I mean, it's one of those games that could go either way. Obviously, probably the two best players in Richland County are in that game with
Miller.
Bodpin Miller and
DeVito.
Braden DeVito from Shelby's. Thank you very much for that. Names escape me.
You've been covering Lexington a lot this year.
No, I've actually covered, I think, 6 Ontario games this year. So
that's right.
I covered Lexington the first 3 games of the year, and they went 0-3. So at that point, they told me to go cover somebody else. And
they're getting hot at the right time, though.
And the Ontario-Shelby game is just one of the Sweet 16 games that we'll be following on Friday night. We mentioned Lexington. They're 7-5. They've won 2 Division III road playoff games, and that's hard to do. Well, their reward for that success is they get defending state champion Toledo Central Catholic in a game that's going to be played at Tiffin. The 11-1 Fighting Irish are the top-seeded team in the region, and they've won their first 2 playoff games by a combined score of 92-14. I looked at Toledo Central Catholic's schedule. No team in Ohio was beating them this year. The only game they lost was to a team from Detroit.
Oh.
So they're undefeated against Ohio.
Yeah.
Speaking of undefeated, 12-0 Ashland on Friday plays top-seeded Big Walnut from Delaware County in a Division II regional semifinal game at Marion Harding High School. The Arrows knocked off Columbus DeSales at home in Week 12 and what had to be at least a mini upset when you think about the tradition and football-rich tradition of Columbus DeSales. Another game, 11-1 Hillsdale plays Malvern on Friday night in a Division VII regional semifinal at Massillon Perry High School. The Falcons are the highest seed left in their region. They could be playing for a regional title on November 22nd. And as the aforementioned down in Ritchie's neck of the woods, 10-2 Danville will be playing in a regional semifinal game. The Blue Devils down on Tough Street. The game will not be on Tough Street this week. It will be a neutral site.
Mm-hmm.
They will be taking on 10-2 Miller from Perry County. Hopefully Miller's not just one person. Hopefully there's an entire team associated with that. And they'll be playing at a place where I played some games back in the day at Thornville Sheridan High School. And you can't get there from here, Richie. So if you're actually, you said you're taking Friday off, so I guess you don't have to go to.
How far is it
Thornville.
away from here?
You can't get there from here.
You better print out directions, MapQuest.
It is, as we used to say down in Southeast Ohio, boy, that's a fur piece.
Okay.
You know, that's as the crow flies.
Yeah.
That is way south.
All right.
We usually don't have 6 area teams.
Well, but keep in mind,
I guess we're still only at regional semi. Yeah.
And when they expanded the playoffs, I mean,
that's right.
Yeah, but still, to have this many teams playing in Week 13, I think is excellent. But Danville is the top seed in its region and is just 2 wins away from the state semifinals. So good luck to all the area teams that are going to be playing on Friday night. And Ritchie will make his way down to Thornville, I'm sure, before that happens. All right, enough sports talk. Let's get to some news of the week. Mansfield City Council approved a $250,000 grant last week through the Richland County Foundation in the form of the second Downtown Development Incentive Program Award. Mansfield native and developer Famiko Williams is going to use that grant to restore the former Webb's Grocery Store at the corner of North Mulberry and 5th Streets on the city's north side.
Wow.
As part of Famiko's Place Phase 1 restorations, he plans to create 5 upper-level apartments, which will create additional downtown housing. Allie Watson, president and CEO of the foundation, said the Downtown Grant Program is a key element of the Mansfield Rising program itself, because a part of that plan identified the need for more downtown residential opportunities. So congratulations
You know,
to
Kamiko. I missed this story. You wrote it on November 6th, which was a day after the election and a day before my birthday. So I wasn't paying attention to anything.
Yeah, it was. Some of us, even after election night ended, we're back in the saddle early.
Of course,
Wednesday,
of course, as expected. But
Speaking-
that's an exciting story.
And I think it's going to be a really cool thing. And when I talked to Famiko, he remembered stopping at Webb's Grocery when he was a young elementary school student, stopping on the way after school to buy candy and things like that. And he's excited about the opportunity to kind of bring that building back.
Is he bringing back the Webb's name or branding or anything? Or
right now the name
just
is
the building?
It's called Famiko's Place at this point. But he's going. I think he's got plans for the lower level, but he's going to start with apartments in the upper level.
Very cool.
Speaking of things that happened the day after the election, the legal battle over the original demolition of the former YMCA along Park Avenue West began in Richland County Common Pleas Court Wednesday morning and will likely continue. Retired Medina County Common Pleas Court Judge Christopher Collier conducted a 20-minute oral hearing on a motion by attorneys for Page Excavating to dismiss a lawsuit that was filed by the city of Mansfield that claims the work was not properly done way back in late 2018, early 2019. At the end of that hearing, Collier, who was selected by the Ohio Supreme Court to preside over the case when both local Common Pleas Court judges said they could not do it, he asked attorneys for both sides to file judgment entries with the positions on the motion. He also promised to do his own research. And I looked up the case file later on in the week, and at this point, the case is tentatively scheduled for a jury trial next July.
Which is probably going to move, right?
Well, could even be settled by then, but they had to work out dates that everybody could be there. So that's what we have right now. Another thing that happened the day after the election, the Wayfinders homeless shelter in Mansfield is thinking about moving to a new and larger home. Miles Parsons, the facility's executive director, made separate presentations about his plans, and I was at both of them, to the Richland County Land Bank in the afternoon and Mansfield City Council at night. The proposal to relocate the 3rd Street shelter, formerly known as Harmony House, is dependent upon purchasing property at 661 Park Avenue East from the Land Bank and then getting financial assistance from the city and the county to renovate the former medical office's buildings on the site. Parsons said the current Wayfinders building would be sold if the move is made, which would open up a property or a building pretty close to the Imagination District. It's right across the street from the Renaissance Theater and the Imagination Museum. Wayfinders served more than 600 individuals in 2023, and Parsons said they're on pace. They may serve more than 700 in 2024. Any thoughts on any of that stuff?
Richie?
What do you got?
How is Wayfinders homeless shelter funded? Is it mostly by grants or not? Is it a nonprofit or?
It is definitely a nonprofit. They do get grant funding from the state, but I think their primary source of income is through funding through the state of Ohio.
And then how did this building come to for fruition for the Wayfinders to
Well,
get?
it used to be a medical office building. It's right, it's almost into Madison Township, but it's still in the city limits. It's right next to the sheriff's office, and it's been vacant for a number of years. And it came into the possession of the land bank, and they've been looking for someone who wants to do something with it. And it sounds like if all comes to pass, then they would actually sell that building at not very much money to Wayfinders for remodeling and use as a homeless shelter.
Richie, did you wish Hunnell a happy Veterans Day?
I did before, right when we came in, I did.
We are recording this on Monday, November 11th.
Yes, there's the song, boys.
There it is.
I will be going out this morning to cover the Veterans Day Parade in Mansfield. and then also the Veterans Honor Wall dedication on Monday afternoon.
Fantastic.
And you'll read both of those later today, i.e. Tuesday, on Richland Source, assuming I get my work done on time. But yeah, there's the greatest military song ever written, and I say that with all due apologies to all other military anthems, but I am partial to Anchors Away.
Well, happy Veterans Day, Carl. And, this year we did something a little different on the Source and Knox Pages and Ashland Source. People can actually submit a tribute to honor a veteran in their life. So that's pretty cool. Thanks to Ralph Phillips, VFW, Post 291. I think that's up in Shelby. They sponsored this initiative, and you can go to our site and read those. And we're kind of calling it Veterans Week. So if you're just listening to this on Tuesday, go check those out. They're kind of all over our site. A bunch of people have been submitting. And you can actually click and share a tribute and just fill out a brief form. And you'll be able to publish those all week. So happy Veterans Week to all those who served.
And I did one of those for my father over the weekend.
Fantastic. Nice.
Career Navy guy who, yes, like most Navy guys back in the day, he cursed like a sailor. So I can honestly tell you that comes where that comes from, in case you're wondering.
Apple didn't fall far from the tree.
No, it did not. All right. Enough news for now. Let's take a quick break. In a few minutes, we will be joined by Mansfield 5th Ward Councilman Aurelio Diaz, one of the busiest people I know. We're going to learn more about Aurelio, what attracted him to run for office, and all of the many irons he has in the fire on a daily basis. So stay with us. Well, welcome back to the Newsman Weekly. Joining me now is Aurelio Diaz, who represents the 5th Ward on Mansfield City Council. Good morning, sir. Thanks for being with us today.
Good morning, and thank you for having me today. Happy Veterans Day.
Oh, thank you. I was going to get you some coffee, but you've already been to relax, so I know you're good to go.
I got my fix.
All right. Well, folks, let's start off by learning more about you as a person. Where'd you grow up? Where'd you go to school? And what were your career plans as a young person, and how'd that kind of play out for you?
I was born in San Antonio, Texas. My mother and I, my brother and I, after my father was deported, we needed somewhere to go, so we came to Mansfield. And we came here because of the jobs, is what my mother told me. So Mansfield is where she remarried, where we established, our roots. So I'd been here since I was 4, but we'd move, off and on. But Mansfield's my home, really. And I went to school at senior high, at the original senior high building, and I graduated in 1995. Afterwards, all my friends were going to college, and no one in my family we didn't have an emphasis on college. It was just like finding a good job, GM or something like that. But I did go to Columbus, and but my initial, it wasn't to go to college first. It was just to squat around and be a rock star. That's what I wanted to do. But I think I took a year off before I went to OSU, and then I transferred to Columbus State because I wanted to be an American Sign Language interpreter. Okay. So but then I moved back here for a variety of reasons. At a time where all my friends, who I'm still friends with, came back to the city and made the best of it, I'd say. And so I didn't really finish my college path, but I didn't really want to. That was never my journey, and I'm glad because I don't have debt now.
That's very good.
But luckily, the jobs that I were kind of grandfathered into when I worked here in social work and case management, that really helped me to be where I want to be at now. So I never really worry about that, but it was always around people and trying to help out. So yeah, I would say my dreams of wanting to become a rock star didn't really happen, but
not yet.
I still do music.
Not yet.
Yeah, that'll happen one day.
You never know.
But that was my dream, was to make music and make a living off of it. But I was also doing other stuff like helping homeless people. I needed a job in Columbus, so I kind of am doing the same thing in a different way.
My oldest son started out at OSU, and he was going to be a nurse, and realized after about a year that maybe that might not be the best path. So he ended up at Columbus State.
Good school, by the way, very good. And
he became a respiratory therapist, which he's been doing now since 2010, I think. So, yeah. It's a good career, and he also didn't graduate with a ton of debt. So
yeah, and I think community college doesn't get enough kudos. I mean, looking back, there's so much I would do now, but Columbus State is a great school.
All right, so I want to talk about, just for a minute, Mansfield Rising.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you were an OG
Mm-hmm.
in Mansfield Rising. You went with the first group of 14 other people who went to South by Southwest way back. I think it was 2018 down in Austin, Texas, to learn what's working in other communities and how those lessons could be used in developing a plan for Mansfield. If you can think back to those days, what were your biggest personal takeaways from that and the formulation of that initial Mansfield Rising plan?
That was 6 years ago, and I feel like before then, our downtown inner city was already, picking up steam. And just going there at South by Southwest with the folks that I went with was very exciting in itself. We were all focused on different areas. But also, you had a lot of free range to walk around the city and listen to people's ideas and from the folks who live there and their concerns. When we came back, that was the biggest thing when we did our talking tours in the community, and our vision kind of changed because we knew it wasn't going to be about us. So it was nice to see the twists and turns of the Mansfield Rising plan, and then also communicating to folks that, see, this isn't just, a quote-unquote elite group of people or chosen people deciding, we're including you in the conversation. And that's why I think it made it so unique. And then we had, we started to spearhead some of the projects, but then COVID happened.
Yes.
And then, but a lot of those things in the plan are still coming to fruition. But I also think that giving it a 2.0 spin has been very needed. Otherwise, you're going to just follow the mold of, these are the same people making the same decisions, and we're not letting any new people in, like gatekeeping. So I think you always need to do that, refresh things. And I think, a lot that we're seeing with the expansion of downtown, like towards the West End or the Westinghouse and North End and the hospital, that's all Mansfield Rising related. So
Yeah, I thought it was interesting. Unlike similar plans that I've seen communities do, this was done by local people. This was not a plan that was developed by an outsider who was going to come in, do some visits, write a plan, and then have that plan get put on the shelf. I mean, this was strictly a locally done deal. How big an impact does that make? Because the plan was made by people who were going to still be living here and actually pushing it forward.
It was a big deal because, there were some people, the majority of people who were chosen to be on that team were people that the general community did not know. I was one of them. No one knew who I was. So you had an artist. You had Damian Buford, who was a budding entrepreneur. You had Leona Smith, who was doing great things at NECIC. So you just had all of these different unassuming people coming to the mix. And that's what made it really different. And I think we did that again with this new group. And it is a testament that, these are true reflections of our community, and we're giving everyone, an idea or an opportunity to talk and give their feedback. And I think that's, when we see Mansfield Rising, before in the beginning, people would roll their eyes, oh, Mansfield Rising, that's just for the downtown. But also have to constantly remind people that every city's downtown, if it's not a strong nucleus, then it's going to be a weak city. You have to start there and then work out. So, yeah.
Yeah, if folks hear what sounds like a dentist drill coming through the podcast, we are in a soundproof room, but when they are doing construction on the roof of the building, Richland Source Rising, then you're going to hear some occasional drilling sounds. So if you're hearing that today, that's honest labor doing great work in Mansfield.
Just the sound of community development.
That's
sound
right.
of progress. All right, I first met you, I think, back in 2019. So it's a year after you've been to Mansfield Rising, you've been to Austin, Texas, to South by Southwest, and you decide that you want to enter politics. And you don't run for like a ward seat or something smaller, township trustee, or you decide to run for city council president right out of the box, and you ran against Cliff Mears. You didn't win, but I remember being impressed at the time. You got 46% of the vote in a citywide race against a well-known Republican candidate. What prompted you to get into politics, and why do you think you were so well received right from the jump?
Politics has never been my interest, and it still isn't. Before all that, I was, doing my work with, case management, doing a lot of music, art, stuff that's really important to me personally. And Mansfield Rising really sparked that because I was living on the square in an apartment with a lot of creatives at that time, like side by side. And there were a lot of issues that were happening in our city, our cars are getting broken into, litter, just little things like that. I shouldn't say little. But we would call the city and like, who do we need to talk to? And it was always call your council person. And none of us knew first that we had 6 wards and are a council person. But when we reach out to that person, we never got any communication back, whether it was phone calls or emails. And we didn't really see that person until it was time for re-election. So that put a bad taste in my mouth. And then I lived above the Democrat headquarters at one point in one of my apartments. And they approached me and said, would you consider running for city council president? And I was like, what's it entail? And I should have got more information because I didn't know what it entailed. I think they really needed someone to run to. So I was like, they knew I was planning to run in 2021 because I had already had a conversation with that previous council person. I'm like, hey, respectfully, we had lunch. I'm like, we don't see you, disappointed in you. When your term is up, I'm going to run for your seat. But it never struck me, how do you do that? I didn't know you needed to be a part of a party at that time. So the party did approach me, and that's how it happened. I kind of put all faith in them in terms of how campaigning went. It was a learning experience, and I learned right away, what parties meant to me. So that was kind of like the beginning of how I am now politically. But I was surprised that I got that many votes because I knew I wasn't going to win. Like, no one knew who I was outside of downtown and New Hope and the music scene. But, it was, how do I do this in the most unpolitical way? It was how I approached it.
Well, I remember during that campaign, I think your main themes were diversity, inclusion, mental health issues, morale of the city. I mean, none of those are, none of those are like traditional kind of political themes.
I was so off. And that was another thing, like looking back, like how I campaigned in 2019 and how to 2021 is different. For one, a lot of those things were things that you're kind of pushed into talking about. If you're, you have at the time, the Democrat leaders are like, this is what you should be talking about. And then, you have the team that you're assigned, and it's like, you're not really in control of it at all. You're kind of told. And I didn't like that. And I knew it was kind of out of touch because I knew more and more the role of the president isn't even really to vote unless it's like a tiebreaker. So it was pushing different things that didn't really resonate with the actual role. So when I decided, and I lost that election, obviously, and when I ran again for what I intended to run for, I told, the leaders of the Dem Party, no, I don't want no help. I'll do it myself. And that's why I won.
Well, so let's talk about that. You were elected in November 2021 as a Democrat to represent the 5th Ward. You got almost 63% of the vote in beating the incumbent, Jason Lawrence. Side note, Jason Lawrence got elected as a Democrat and then halfway through the term switched over and became a Republican.
Yeah.
All right, so 6 months after you win, you announced you're not becoming a Republican, but you are going to leave the Democratic Party and become an independent. Yeah. And I think one of the thing you said at the time is, quote, people don't always want to be identified as belonging to a particular party.
Yeah.
So how has that decision resonated in your life on council or in the 5th Ward? How has that gone?
It's gone really well. And to be fair, those are conversations I had with leaders within the local Democrat Party, because there's a lot of leaders and members who I'm related to and good friends with. And so they understood it. When I was campaigning in 2019, I was also very vocal about telling people as I went out, very vocal, don't vote for me just because I'm a D and that person's an R. So I've never hid the fact that I've encouraged people to vote for and do their homework and vote for the candidates based on who they were. And that would piss off the Dems locally. But that's how I believe. And I did look kind of bad when you had a previous council person, the 5th Ward, leave the party. And I understood why he did. It made sense for him. And for me, it was because as I was campaigning, it was a lot of criticism for friendships I ever had or people I was interacting with, and you can't do that. And I'm like, no, let's just make it official. I mean, I don't want to be a puppet, and I vote Democratic for the most part. So, and I think that's where a lot of if I get any criticism, it's because of that. Because people see you as a sellout, or you drink the Kool-Aid, or it's those things that that bothered me at first. When it was coming from people that I was close with, but now I'm just kind of like, it's not that. I get it, but
What's the term limit for council members?
It's 4 years, so my term is up next year.
Okay, but you'll be able to run again for Fifth Ward?
Yes, I'll be running. I actually will be running as a independent, non-party affiliated.
I was gonna ask about that. You mentioned when you first ran, Democratic Party kind of told you the talking points. So what's that going to be like as an independent? How's that process going to be different?
So I already have my my petition. I got it a few months ago, and it'll be less signatures, and it could be residents of my ward from non-affiliated to Republican, Democrat. And one of my biggest goals, if I were to win, I said, was not to just be present, but to hopefully increase, be so present and involved, and get people involved that voter turnout will increase. It's always so small in wards 4 and 5, for a variety of reasons, because there's been distrust issues. There's been like really poor representation until it's time for re-election. So it's gone really well. I feel like from day one, I've worked and I've tried my best to put myself on a back burner when working with constituents who are extremely liberal and extremely conservative, because they have the same concerns. And so I don't have any stresses about it, really. I mean, I'm sure I have an opponent on each side. So, but
one of the things I like about covering local government, and city council being a good example of that, under the charter, you have to run as a Republican or a Democrat or an independent. But once you guys take office, when I cover a meeting, I don't see R's and D's.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no real clear delineation.
Yeah, I agree. And that's another thing. Local government is not, but if I weren't involved with it, I would know that either, because times are so heated right now. People are, we're divided, and they want to see that fight and bickering and collaborative work like they see in bigger cities. And for instance, when it came towards the marijuana dispensary, the majority of people who voted in favor of dispensaries were conservative. And you just never know who the wild cards are going to be. And I really think that the makeup of our council in the past few years have been great representations. They actually talk to people. They're not just voting on what they want personally or what their party is forcing on them. And I think that really it makes those party heads uncomfortable a lot of times. So I really respect elected officials who really know they're going to get crucified for doing what they think is right, but they do anyway. And I think we have a lot of great leaders doing that right now.
Is the biggest challenge with that funding? Campaign funding
Yeah.
from the parties?
Yeah.
So it's like, if we were to move towards this independent thing where people actually have their own opinion and voice, is that one of the biggest barriers to that?
I think so. I really do, because the perk of and I don't want to, I don't want to feel like I'm anti someone being a part of a party, because
Right.
I think there's good things in it in terms of camaraderie and getting involved in things that are close to you. But realistically, you also are dependent on them helping you with your money. If you're campaigning for something, award's not a big thing, but citywide, countywide, you're going to need money to purchase billboards, yard signs, flyers, mailers,
Ads in Richland Source.
ads in Richland Source, exactly. And that stuff adds up, and it's not coming from your pocket. So there are a lot of people, who they might want to vote for someone of a different party, but they know that they can't, or they have to do it in secrecy. When I was campaigning 3 years ago, I had some folks on, local Republicans who would give other people money so that they can put it towards my election or my campaign. So there's that. And even though it's admirable, that's what we live at. So I think, for people who are listening and don't understand, it's really complicated in terms of your involvement with parties. But I think just the stability, especially if you're trying to go further, you don't want to, I guess, have too many dissenting opinions. And that's just my own personal opinion from the party I used to be involved with. So I don't want to say that's everyone's experience.
Now, at this point, believe it or not, even though you're still in your first term, you're one of the veterans on city council. There's so many new faces.
So many, yeah.
When you think about it. How has you're almost 4 years in. How has that changed the way you approach your role in council as a local lawmaker?
It's changed a little bit. I do like when you have a new person coming in, it's the whole dynamic. You do get kind of fearful, are we going to go backwards, or are we not going to communicate? But as you've seen with these new changes, even how we go about appointing people to committees, it's been so respectful and everyone's included. And I think that's how it should be. Those discussions are involving everyone. How I approach it is differently. You know, when I would say my least favorite part of being in this position are the 2 monthly meetings. I hate going to the meeting. You know, but that's important because you're voting on stuff. It's helped me understand the importance of bills being paid. It's not always going to be a hot topic. My favorite is what I do is going out in the neighborhoods and really trying to like educate people and put myself in situations where, okay, I'm going to go where I'm not wanted. This is going to be hard, you know, just those types of things. But using that, and you know, there's one guy, he's just such a big critic of everything I do, and he meets with me, and I'm like, okay, well, let's get you involved with this. So you know, we have him on a coalition now, and it's like we all have a role here, and everyone can just gripe about it. So how do I'm not trying to like change people's minds, but first of all, get people involved. You know, when they're griping about this doesn't happen and there's not enough, why isn't there any pools? I'm like, okay, well, these are the reasons, because they're all published, they're all being told. That's my style, and that's, if I were to, you know, continue on, that's how I would continue to do it. So,
well, I know outside of you talking about not being a fan of council meetings, and that's certainly something you and I might share in common.
You're there a lot.
You're one of the busiest people I know in city events. I remember riding in a car with you during a homeless council a couple of years ago. You lead trash cleanup efforts in your ward and other places, charitable events, music events. I cover a lot of things, and I almost always see you there. Is that something you do because you're an elected leader, or is it something you would do even if you didn't hold office?
You know, these are things I did before that. I don't think I think a lot of people who know me now is because of elected official things, but way before that, I was always doing that, if it was because of my job or it was because of things that the creative community were doing. So none of that's changed. Well, I shouldn't say that. A lot has changed because, you know, I'm representing a ward that hasn't had any representation at all. And that was a promise. When I would canvass and talk to people, they're like, well, we'll vote for you, but we'll never see you. I'm like, no. So it's really coordinating things and not trying to do it all, but get them involved. And I think that going to these events, and not just going and taking a picture, but actually if it's an event where you can help out or bring some awareness to it, then you do that. And that's the power of social media. So on one hand, you know, people might be like, you know, it's very self-serving. You're just showing people what you're doing. It's like, yeah, but I'm not doing it alone. But I think we've come from an administration, and in the past where nothing was ever highlighted, nothing was ever shared, and I think that's changed with the city, social media, with the mayors and other council people. And but you know, I would say it's just I've taken it to a different level because it's important. You know, a lot of the causes and people I work with, you know, it resonates with me because I didn't come from a very, you know, easy upbringing. So, you know, I remember the communities and neighborhoods I lived in, and, you know, those causes resonate with me. So, you know, I can help in any way that I can. And I think now people will pay attention. And, okay, if you can use that to your advantage to you know, change something, then do it.
I don't think everyone clearly, in fact, I know there's people who don't understand the geography of the Fifth Ward.
Yeah.
I mean, it starts downtown, but it runs north all the way out to the airport.
Yeah.
So talk a little bit about the area that you represent.
So down the Fifth Ward, I want to say it might be the biggest one, but it also has the least amount of residents. So it is downtown on North Park Street to Bowman. If you go down Bowman Street from Park Avenue, it's going to be on the side where John Park is and Welcome to Mansfield Greenery, all the way to the airport. So that corridor coming into the city from Shenandoah. So you have those really small rural areas where their biggest concern is, you know, some of the issues happening at the airport or coyotes eating their chickens. Then it goes towards the Westinghouse, Newman, Liberty Park. So a lot of those areas, Connor, which I thought were Madison areas initially, are part of Fifth Ward too. So with that ward comes maybe 2,000 residents. All the prisons are there. We have the focus of downtown, Westinghouse, but there's also the areas of concern of the homelessness and the encampments that were growing all the time. So we as in people in neighborhoods see the neighbors getting involved. We try to identify encampments and how we help those folks. Housing. There's a lot going on, good and bad, in the ward, but it's a pretty exciting ward, I would say. A lot of things happening.
See, I got to tell you, Hiser, when they rededicated the flagpole at Liberty Park this summer, I'm sure talk about a guy that gets
scar.
About a guy that gets involved in his work. They needed somebody to go up to bring the flag down because it was stuck. And there goes Aurelio,
of course,
shinnying up the flagpole. And he got up there just fine. I think it was coming down that you nearly broke your leg. And
I slid down. I was scared because it was
very patriotic.
Right? Me on a pole. So that's nothing new. But it was a dedication. So I'm like, I'm going to get on this pole. And the higher I went, it was shaking. And I would have turned around, but everyone's watching me, so I can't be weak.
Right.
So I went pretty high. And then when I slid down, though, it's how I had my legs around it. I shaved off all my skin on the front of my leg and the back of my leg. It hurt, but it was fun. I think.
And you know what? He stayed there during the entire dedication. You didn't see him run away and take care. I mean, he was.
That's why he gets the votes.
Here's a guy that's involved in his community.
It was fun though, but and that that stuff like that. Just seeing that particular day, you had the vets, you had the Stillwells, just everyone, and the skaters, everyone celebrating this awesome day, and that's. I think if you can use all those aspects of your life and bring them all together or introduce them, connecting people, I should say, that's a success, I think. And I think we're doing that.
I want to know, before we go to rapid fire, what's one of your biggest goals while you're in office? If you get elected another term, what's one of your, and I mean maybe it could be a long shot thing. What if you could wave a magic wand, or if you're really working towards something, what would you see change?
I would. Excuse me. I would say it's really sorry, my coffee's making
That's
me
all right.
cough
Take
here.
a drink.
Let me hear. Too much cream in this, I think. It's really Walt Disney sounding, and that is just encouraging people to work with your enemy. Or work with someone who is different than you. Work with someone who you've been told for a long time to work with. And when I say work, it's talk with. Try to understand. Put yourself on pause for a second. You know who you are, but listen, why does this person, why does this group, why does this organization do what they do? And what do you guys have in common? It doesn't make you fickle or weak to want to know what makes those people tick, because you know who you are. But do that and then move forward with whatever important issue you have in your community, your ward, your state, and go from there. And that's really it. That's one of my biggest goals in 4 years, besides higher turnout with voting. I think for me, it's helped me grow. It's helped me be less judgmental. It's challenged me a lot, and I've seen other people take that path. And I think that's been the true route to why we're seeing a lot of change. But I can understand also why it's frowned down upon, and why it's scary, and why it can be unsettling. Because I've been there before too, where I would never do that. Why would I want to collaborate with that person?
Yeah, and it seems like some people want you to fight more.
Yeah. And I do. Before that always confused me. But now I do see it for what it is. I think some people like to fight and make changes and advocate, front and center. There's different ways you can make changes, where it's, using your voice on social media, holding a sign and demonstrating on the street, or doing things more behind the scenes. But I think if you don't do what they want you to do, then you're not really doing what they think you should be doing. So yeah. I think it goes back to control too, I feel. But I know it's hard because, you can't be mad at people for being angry about the things they are, because you don't know what happened to them in life. And I think they all care, but I think sometimes they care so much that they are not willing to care about other people's perspectives, and take the brave step to get to know other people.
Well, we're almost 1 year into the new administration. I won't call it new anymore, I guess, of Mayor Jody Perry, Finance Director Kelly Blankenship, Law Director Raleigh Harper. What are the biggest changes you've seen since those folks took office in January?
I think the boost in morale is one, huge. These are folks who, and with them comes the shifts in leadership that they've appointed. There's been a lot of approachability, I would say, with these leaders. And I think that's, that we also know, hopefully, that these new leaders are coming to a new administration. So there's a lot of things to change and clean up and fix. And it's not going to be easy, but I think they're doing a great job at keeping their heads up and being positive when people are being very critical. But I think for the most part, they are appreciated. People are listening. Part of my full-time job is at NECIC as a community organizer. So a lot of things I do on city council, I kind of do also with my regular job. And every second and fourth Tuesday, we lead a group of North End elders, which is between 65 to 70 seniors of the North End. And we always have elected officials come and do things like call bingo numbers and talk, and not just during election like all the time. And a lot of them who've typically voted Democrat love the mayor. They're like, oh my gosh, she comes out, she talks to us, she answers our phone calls. So those things, just being in contact and respecting people's time and having a courtesy to get back with them is huge. So, and this is only their first year. I mean, I think I always say you're going to have to maybe have 2 or 3 years before you see big changes. But I think it starts with having pride in where you live at and how you can be involved, whether it's big or small. And they're encouraging people to do that.
All right, we're going to finish now with a game of rapid-fire questions. As Hiser intimated a minute ago, we call it Instant Truth.
All right.
Now, these are all your opinions.
Cool.
So there's no right or wrong answers, but you only get 5 seconds
All right.
for each one. If you take too long, you're going to hear our very expensive buzzer sound that we've developed on the show. Sounds like this. It's very impressive sound. So rapid fire, are you ready?
Yes.
Best drink at Relax, It's Just Coffee.
North Main with oat milk.
All right. Best beer at the Phoenix.
I like the Ferryman or the Warden's Pie.
Best singer today.
Yoko Ono.
Best musical instrument.
Auto harp.
I knew that would be the one. All right. Best or your most favorite tourist attraction in Mansfield?
Oh gosh. Shawshank.
Best book you've read in the last year?
The Prophet.
And I don't know if you're a big sports fan, but are the Cleveland Cavaliers going to lose a game this season?
Go Sports.
You just gave them the Newsman Weekly jinx. They're probably going to lose tonight, and by the time this airs,
That's
they'll
the way that
They make fun of me and my friends they're all
sports ball.
I'm always like, yeah, my winning parlay is on games.com. They're like, you made that up. I'm like, I didn't even know that the Guardians were a team until this year. I'm like, who are the Guardians?
Yeah, now you do though.
And that was the previous Indians, right?
Yeah.
See,
correct.
I don't watch TV. I really don't watch television. I'm so out the loop.
All right, folks, we will leave it at that for today. Aurelio, thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you guys so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Ungodly hour of the day.
Yeah.
But, well, folks, that'll be it for today. I'll be back in a second to put a bow on this week's podcast. Until then, please remember what Mark Twain said. If you tell the truth, you don't have to remember anything.